Chapter 3. Schmendrick came back a little before dawn, slipping between the cages as silently as water. Only the harpy made a sound as he went by. "I couldn't get away any sooner," he told the unicorn. "She's set Rook to watching me, and he hardly ever sleeps. But I asked him a riddle, and it always takes him all night to solve riddles. Next time I'll tell him a joke and keep him busy for a week." The unicorn was gray and still. "There is magic on me," she said. "Why did you not tell me?" "I thought you knew," the magician answered gently. "After all, didn't you wonder how it could be that they recognized you?" Then he smiled, which made him look a little older. "No, of course not. You never would wonder about that." "There has never been a spell on me before," the unicorn said. She shivered long and deep. "There has never been a world in which I was not known." "I know exactly how you feel," Schmendrick said eagerly. The unicorn looked at him out of dark, endless eyes, and he smiled nervously and looked at his hands. "It's a rare man who is taken for what he truly is," he said. "There is much misjudgment in the world. Now I knew you for a unicorn when I first saw you, and I know that I am your friend, yet you take me for a clown, or a clod, or a betrayer, and so must I be if you see me so. The magic on you is only magic, and will vanish as soon as you are free. But the enchantment of error that you put on me I must wear forever in your eyes. We are not always what we seem, and hardly ever what we dream. Still, I have read, or heard it sung, that unicorns, when time was young, could tell the difference twixt the two, the false shining and the true. The lips laugh, and the hearts rue." His quiet voice lifted as the sky grew lighter, and for a moment the unicorn could not hear the bars whining, or the soft ringing of the harpy's wings. "I think you are my friend," she said. "Will you help me?" "If not you, no one," the magician answered. "You are my last chance." One by one, the sad beasts of the midnight carnival came whimpering, sneezing, and shuddering awake. One had been dreaming of rocks and bugs and tender leaves, another of bounding through high, hot grass, a third of mud and blood, and one had dreamed of a hand scratching the lonely place behind its ears. Only the harpy had not slept, and now she sat staring into the sun without blinking. Schmendrick said, "If she frees herself first, we are lost." They heard Rook's voice nearby. That voice always sounded nearby, calling, "Schmendrick! Hey, Schmendrick! I got it. It's a coffee pot, right?" The magician began to move slowly away. "Tonight," he murmured to the unicorn. "Trust me till dawn," and was gone with a flap and a scramble, seeming as before to leave part of himself behind. Rook loped by the cage a moment later, all deadly economy. Hidden in her black wagon, Mommy Fortuna grumbled Ellie's song to herself. "Here is there, and high is low. All may be undone. What is true, no two men know. What is gone is gone." Soon a new catch of spectators began to come sauntering up to see the show. Rook called them in, crying, "Creatures of the night," like an iron parrot, and Schmendrick stood on a box and did tricks. The unicorn watched him with great interest and a growing uncertainty, not of his heart, but of his craft. He made an entire sow out of a sow's ear, turned a sermon into a stone, a glass of water into a handful of water, a 5 of spades into a 12 of spades, and a rabbit into a goldfish that drowned. Each time he conjured up confusion, he glanced quickly at the unicorn with eyes that said, "Oh, but you know what I really did." Once he changed a dead rose into a seed. The unicorn liked that, even though it did turn out to be a radish seed. The show began again. Once more Rook led the crowd from one of Mommy Fortuna's poor fables to another. The dragon blazed, Cerberus howled for hell to come and help him, and the satyr tempted women until they wept. They squinted and pointed at the manticore's yellow tusks and swollen sting, grew still at the thought of the Midgard serpent, and wondered at Arachne's new web, which was like a fisherman's net with the dripping moon in it. Each of them took it for a real web, but only the spider believed that it held the real moon. This time, Rook did not tell the story of King Phineas and the Argonauts. Indeed, he hurried his sightseers past the harpy's cage as quickly as he could, gabbling only her name and the meaning of it. The harpy smiled. Nobody saw her smile except the unicorn, and she wished that she had chanced to be looking somewhere else at the time. When they stood in front of her cage, gazing silently in at her, the unicorn thought bitterly, "Their eyes are so sad. How much sadder would they be, I wonder, if the spell that disguises me dissolved, and they were left staring at a common white mare? The witch is right. Not one would know me." But then a soft voice, rather like the voice of Schmendrick the magician, said inside her, "But their eyes are so sad." And when Rook shrieked, "Behold, the very end," and the black hanging slithered back to reveal Ellie, mumbling in the cold and the darkness, the unicorn felt the same helpless fear of growing old that set the crowd to flight, even though she knew that it was only Mommy Fortuna in the cage. She thought, the witch knows more than she knows she knows. Night came quickly, perhaps because the harpy hurried it on. The sun sank into dirty clouds like a stone into the sea, with about as much chance of rising again, and there was no moon or any stars. Mommy Fortuna made her gliding rounds of the cages. The harpy did not move when she drew near, and that made the old woman stand and stare at her for a long while. "Not yet," she muttered at last. "Not yet." But her voice was weary and doubtful. She peered briefly at the unicorn, her eyes a stir of yellow in the greasy gloom. "Well, one day more," she said in a crackling sigh, and turned away again. There was no sound in the carnival after she was gone. All the beasts were asleep save the spider, who wove, and the harpy, who waited. Yet the night creaked tighter and tighter, until the unicorn expected it to split wide open, ripping a seam down the sky to reveal. More bars, she thought. Where is the magician? At last he came hurrying through the silence, spinning and dancing like a cat in the cold, stumbling over shadows. When he reached the unicorn's cage, he made a joyful bow to her and said proudly, "Schmendrick is with you." In the cage nearest to hers, the unicorn heard the edged shivering of bronze. "I think we have very little time," she said. "Can you truly set me free?" The tall man smiled, and even his pale, solemn fingers grew merry. "I told you that the witch has made 3 great mistakes. Your capture was the last, and the taking of the harpy the second, because you are both real, and Mommy Fortuna can do no more make you hers than she can make the winter a day longer. But to take me for a mountebank like herself, that was her first and fatal folly, for I too am real," said Schmendrick the magician, "the last of the red-hot swamis, and I am older than I look." "Where is the other?" the unicorn asked. Schmendrick was pulling back his sleeves. "Don't worry about Rook. I asked him another riddle, one that has no answer. He may never move again." He spoke 3 angled words and snapped his fingers. The cage disappeared. The unicorn found herself standing in a grove of trees, orange and lemon, pear and pomegranate, almond and acacia. With soft spring earth under her feet and the sky growing over her, her heart turned light as smoke, and she gathered up the strength of her body for a great bound into the sweet night. But she let the leap drift out of her, untaken, for she knew, although she could not see them, that the bars were still there. She was too old not to know. "I'm sorry," Schmendrick said, somewhere in the dark. "I would have liked for that spell to have freed you." Now he sang something cold and low, and the strange trees blew away like dandelion down. "This is a surer spell," he said. "The bars are now as brittle as old cheese, which I crumble and scatter so. Then he gasped and snatched his hands away. Each long finger was dripping blood. "I must have gotten the accent wrong," he said hoarsely. He hid his hand in his cloak and tried to make his voice light. "It comes and goes." A scratching of flinty phrases this time, and Schmendrick's bloody hands flickering across the sky. Something gray and grinning, something like a bear, but bigger than a bear. Something that chuckled muddily came limping from somewhere, eager to crack the cage like a nut and pick out bits of the unicorn's flesh with its claws. Schmendrick ordered it back into the night, but it wouldn't go. The unicorn backed into a corner and lowered her head, but the harpy stirred softly in her cage, ringing, and the gray shape turned what must have been its head and saw her. It made a foggy, globbering sound of terror and was gone. The magician cursed and shivered. He said, "I called him up one other time, long ago. I couldn't handle him then either. Now we owe our lives to the harpy, and she may yet come to call for them before the sun rises." He stood silent, twisting his wounded fingers, waiting for the unicorn to speak. "I'll try once more," he said finally. "Shall I try once more?" The unicorn thought that she could still see the night boiling where the gray thing had been. "Yes," she said. Schmendrick took a deep breath, spat 3 times, and spoke words that sounded like bells ringing under the sea. He scattered a handful of powder over the spittle and smiled triumphantly as it puffed up in a single silent flash of green. When the light had faded, he said 3 more words. They were like the noise bees might make buzzing on the moon. The cage began to grow smaller. The unicorn could not see the bars moving, but each time Schmendrick said, "Ah, no," she had less room in which to stand. Already she could not turn around. The bars were drawing in, pitiless as the tide or the morning, and they would shear through her until they surrounded her heart, which they would keep a prisoner forever. She had not cried out when the creature Schmendrick had summoned came, grinning toward her. But now she made a sound. It was small and despairing, but not yet yielding. Schmendrick stopped the bars, though she never knew how. If he spoke any magic, she had not heard it, but the cage stopped shrinking a breath before the bars touched her body. She could feel them all the same, each one like a little cold wind meowing with hunger, but they could not reach her. The magician's arms fell to his sides. "I dare no more," he said heavily. "The next time I might not be able." His voice trailed miserably away, and his eyes were as defeated as his hands. "The witch made no mistake in me," he said. "Try again," the unicorn said. "You are my friend. Try again." But Schmendrick, smiling bitterly, was fumbling through his pockets in search of something that clicked and clinked. "I knew it would come to this," he muttered. "I dreamed it differently, but I knew." He brought out a ring from which dangled several rusty keys. "You deserve the services of a great wizard," he said to the unicorn, "but I'm afraid you'll have to be glad of the aid of a second-rate pickpocket. Unicorns know not of need or shame or doubt or debt, but mortals, as you may have noticed, take what they can get, and Rook can only concentrate on one thing at a time." The unicorn was suddenly aware that every animal in the midnight carnival was awake, making no sound, but watching her. In the next cage, the harpy began to stamp slowly from one foot to the other. "Hurry," the unicorn said. "Hurry." Schmendrick was already fitting a key into the snickering lock. At his first attempt, which failed, the lock fell silent, but when he tried another key, it cried out loudly, "Ho-ho! Some magician! Some magician!" It had Mommy Fortuna's voice. "Ah, turned blue," the magician mumbled, but the unicorn could feel him blushing. He twisted the key, and the lock snapped open, with one last grunt of contempt. Schmendrick swung the cage door wide and said softly, "Step down, lady. You are free." The unicorn stepped lightly to the ground, and Schmendrick the magician drew back in sudden wonder. "Oh," he whispered, "it was different when there were bars between us. You look smaller and not as... oh my." She was home in her forest, which was black and wet and ruined, because she had been gone so long. Someone was calling to her from a long way off, but she was home, warming the trees and waking the grass. Then she heard Rook's voice, like a boat bottom gritting on pebbles. "Okay, Schmendrick, I give up. Why is a raven like a writing desk?" The unicorn moved away into deepest shadow, and Rook saw only the magician and the empty, dwindled cage. His hand jumped to his pocket and came away again. "Why, you thin thief," he said, grinning iron. "She'll string you on barbed wire to make a necklace for the harpy." He turned then and headed straight for Mommy Fortuna's wagon. "Run," the magician said. He made a frantic, foolish, flying leap and landed on Rook's back, hugging the dark man dumb and blind with his long arms. They fell together, and Schmendrick scrambled up first, his knees nailing Rook's shoulders to the earth. "Barbed wire," he gasped. "You pile of stones, you waste, you desolation. I'll stuff you with misery till it comes out of your eyes. I'll change your heart into green grass, and all you love into sheep. I'll turn you into a bad poet with dreams. I'll set all your toenails growing inward. You mess with me." Rook shook his head and sat up, hurling Schmendrick 10 feet away. "What are you talking about?" he chuckled. "You can't turn cream into butter." The magician was getting to his feet, but Rook pushed his back down and sat on him. "I never did like you," he said pleasantly. "You give yourself airs, and you're not very strong." Heavy as night, his hands closed on the magician's throat. The unicorn did not see. She was out at the farthest cage, where the manticore growled and whimpered and lay flat. She touched the point of her horn to the lock, and was gone to the dragon's cage without looking back. One after another, she set them all free, the satyr, Cerberus, the Midgard serpent. Their enchantments vanished as they felt their freedom, and they leaped and lumbered and slithered away into the night. Once more a lion, an ape, a snake, a crocodile, a joyous dog. None of them thanked the unicorn, and she did not watch them go. Only the spider paid no mind when the unicorn called softly to her through the open door. Arachne was busy with a web which looked to her as though the Milky Way had begun to fall like snow. The unicorn whispered, "Weaver, freedom is better. Freedom is better." But the spider fled unhearing up and down her iron loom. She never stopped for a moment, even when the unicorn cried, "It's really very attractive, Arachne, but it's not art." The new web drifted down the bars like snow. Then the wind began. The spider web blew across the unicorn's eyes and disappeared. The harpy had begun to beat her wings, calling her power in, as a crouching wave draws sand and water roaring down the beach. A bloodshot moon burst out of the clouds, and the unicorn saw her, swollen gold, her streaming hair kindling, the cold, slow wings shaking the cage. The harpy was laughing. In the shadow of the unicorn's cage, Rook and Schmendrick were on their knees. The magician was clutching the heavy ring of keys, and Rook was rubbing his head and blinking. Their faces were blind with terror as they stared at the rising harpy, and they leaned together in the wind. It blew them against one another, and their bones rang. The unicorn began to walk toward the harpy's cage. Schmendrick the magician, tiny and pale, kept opening and closing his mouth at her, and she knew what he was shrieking, though she could not hear him. "She will kill you! She will kill you! Run, you fool, while she's still a prisoner! She will kill you if you set her free!" But the unicorn walked on, following the light of her horn, until she stood before Seleno, the Dark One. For an instant, the icy wings hung silent in the air, like clouds, and the harpy's old yellow eyes sank into the unicorn's heart and drew her close. "I will kill you if you set me free," the eyes said. "Set me free." The unicorn lowered her head until her horn touched the lock of the harpy's cage. The door did not swing open, and the iron bars did not thaw into starlight, but the harpy lifted her wings, and the four sides of the cage fell slowly away and down, like the petals of some great flower waking at night. And out of the wreckage the harpy bloomed, terrible and free, screaming, her hair swinging like a sword. The moon withered and fled. The unicorn heard herself cry out, not in terror, but in wonder. "Oh, you are like me!" She reared joyously to meet the harpy's stoop, and her horn leaped up into the wicked wind. The harpy struck once, missed, and swung away, her wings clanging and her breath warm and stinking. She burned overhead, and the unicorn saw herself reflected on the harpy's bronze breast, and felt the monster shining from her own body. So they circled one another like a double star, and under the shrunken sky there was nothing real but the two of them. The harpy laughed with delight, but her eyes turned the color of honey. The unicorn knew she was going to strike again. The harpy folded her wings and fell like a star, not at the unicorn, but beyond her, passing so close that a single feather drew blood from the unicorn's shoulder. Bright claws reaching for the heart of Mommy Fortuna, who was stretching out her own sharp hands as though to welcome the harpy home. "Not alone!" The witch howled triumphantly at both of them. "You never could have freed yourselves alone. I held you." Then the harpy reached her, and she broke like a dead stick and fell. The harpy crouched on her body, hiding it from sight, and the bronze wings turned red. The unicorn turned away. Close by, she heard a child's voice telling her that she must run. She must run. It was the magician. His eyes were huge and empty, and his face, always too young, was collapsing into childhood as the unicorn looked at him. "No," she said. "Come with me." The harpy made a thick, happy sound that melted the magician's knees, but the unicorn said again, "Come with me," and together they walked away from the midnight carnival. The moon was gone, but to the magician's eyes the unicorn was the moon, cold and white and very old, lighting his way to safety. Or to madness. He followed her, never once looking back, even when he heard the desperate scrambling and skidding of heavy feet, the boom of bronze wings, and Rook's interrupted scream. He ran, the unicorn said. "You must never run from anything immortal. It attracts their attention." Her voice was gentle and without pity. "Never run," she said. "Walk slowly and pretend to be thinking of something else. Sing a song, say a poem, do your tricks, but walk slowly and she may not follow. Walk very slowly, magician." So they fled across the night together, step by step, the tall man in black and the horned white beast. The magician crept as close to the unicorn's light as he dared, for beyond it moved hungry shadows, and shadows of the sounds that the harpy made as she destroyed the little there was to destroy of the midnight carnival. But another sound followed them long after these had faded, followed them into morning on a strange road, the tiny dry sound of a spider weeping. Chapter 4. Like a newborn child, the magician wept for a long time before he could speak. "The poor old woman," he whispered at last. The unicorn said nothing, and Schmendrick raised his head and stared at her in a strange way. A gray morning rain was beginning to fall, and she shone through it like a dolphin. "No," she said, answering his eyes. "I can never regret." He was silent, crouched by the road in the rain, drawing his soaked cloak close around his body until he looked like a broken black umbrella. The unicorn waited, feeling the days of her life falling around her with the rain. "I can sorrow," she offered gently, "but it's not the same thing." When Schmendrick looked at her again, he had managed to pull his face together, but it was still struggling to escape from him. "Where will you go now?" he asked. "Where were you going when she took you?" I was looking for my people, the unicorn said. Have you seen them, magician? They are wild and sea-white like me. Schmendrick shook his head gravely. I have never seen anyone like you, not while I was awake. There were supposed to be a few unicorns left when I was a boy, but I knew only one man who had ever seen one. They are surely gone, lady, all but you. When you walk, you make an echo where they used to be. No, she said, for others have seen them. It gladdened her to hear that there had still been unicorns as recently as the magician's childhood. She said, A butterfly told me of the Red Bull, and the witch spoke of King Haggard, so I am going wherever they are to learn whatever they know. Can you tell me where Haggard is king? The magician's face almost got away, but he caught it and began to smile very slowly, as though his mouth had turned to iron. He bent it into the proper shape in time, but it was an iron smile. I can tell you a poem, he said. Where all the hills are lean as knives, and nothing grows, not leaves nor lives, where hearts are sour as boiled beer, Haggard is the ruler here. I will know when I get there then, she said, thinking that he was mocking her. Do you know any poems about the Red Bull? There are none, Schmendrick answered. He rose to his feet, pale and smiling. About King Haggard, I know only what I have heard, he said. He is an old man, stingy as late November, who rules over a barren country by the sea. Some say that the land was green and soft once before Haggard came, but he touched it and it withered. There is a saying among farmers when they look on a field lost to fire, or locusts, or the wind, as blighted as Haggard's heart. They say also that there are no lights in his castle, and no fires, and that he sends his men out to steal chickens and bed-sheets and pies from windowsills. The story has it that the last time King Haggard laughed, the unicorn stamped her foot. Schmendrick said, As for the Red Bull, I know less than I have heard, for I have heard too many tales, and each argues with another. The bull is real, the bull is a ghost. The bull is Haggard himself when the sun goes down. The bull was in the land before Haggard, or it came with him, or it came to him. It protects him from raids and revolutions, and saves him the expense of arming his men. It keeps him prisoner in his own castle. It is the devil, to whom Haggard has sold his soul. It is the thing he sold his soul to possess. The bull belongs to Haggard, Haggard belongs to the bull. The unicorn felt a shiver of sureness spreading through her, widening from the center like a ripple. In her mind, the butterfly piped again. They passed down all the roads long ago, and the Red Bull ran close behind them and covered their footprints. She saw white forms blowing away in the bellowing wind, and yellow horns shaking. I will go there, she said. Magician, I owe you a boon, for you set me free. What would you have of me before I leave you? Schmendrick's long eyes were glinting like leaves in the sun. Take me with you. She moved away, cool and dancing, and she did not answer. The magician said, I might be useful. I know the way into Haggard's country, and the languages of the lands between here and there. The unicorn seemed very near to vanishing into the sticky mist, and Schmendrick hurried on. Besides, no wanderer was ever the worse for a wizard's company, even a unicorn. Remember the tale of the great wizard Nikos. Once, in the woods, he beheld a unicorn sleeping with his head in the lap of a giggling virgin, while 3 hunters advanced with drawn bows to slay him for his horn. Nikos had only a moment to act. With a word and a wave, he changed the unicorn into a handsome young man, who woke, and, seeing the astonished bowmen, charged upon them and killed them all. His sword was of a twisted, tapering design, and he trampled the bodies where the men were dead. And the girl? The unicorn asked. Did he kill the girl too? No, he married her. He said she was only an aimless child, angry at her family, and that all she really needed was a good man, which he was, then and always, for even Nikos could never give him back his first form. He died old and respected, of a surfeit of violets, some say. He never could get enough violets. There were no children. The story lodged itself somewhere in the unicorn's breath. The magician did him no service, but great ill, she said softly. How terrible it would be if all my people had been turned human by well-meaning wizards, exiled, trapped in burning houses. I would sooner find that the Red Bull had killed them all. Where you are going now, Schmindrick answered, few will mean you anything but evil, and a friendly heart, however foolish, may be as welcome as water one day. Take me with you, for laughs, for luck, for the unknown. Take me with you. The rain faded as he spoke. The sky began to clear, and the wet grass glowed like the inside of a seashell. The unicorn looked away, searching through a fog of kings for one king, and through a snowy glitter of castles and palaces for one built on the shoulders of a bull. No one has ever traveled with me, she said, but then no one ever caged me before, or took me for a white mare, or disguised me as myself. Many things seem determined to happen to me for the first time, and your company will surely not be the strangest of them, nor the last, so you may come with me if you like, though I wish you had asked me for some other reward. Schmindrick smiled sadly. I thought about it. He looked at his fingers, and the unicorn saw the half-moon marks where the bars had bitten him. But you could never have granted my true wish. There it is, the unicorn thought, feeling the first spidery touch of sorrow on the inside of her skin. That is how it will be to travel with a mortal all the time. No, she replied, I cannot turn you into something you are not, no more than the witch could. I cannot turn you into a true magician. I didn't think so, Schmindrick said. It's all right. Don't worry about it. I'm not worrying about it, the unicorn said. A blue jay swooped low over them on that first day of their journey and said, Well, I'll be a squab under glass, and flapped straight home to tell his wife about it. She was sitting on the nest, singing to their children in a dreary drone. Spiders and sow-bugs, and beetles and crickets, slugs from the roses and ticks from the thickets, grasshoppers, snails, and a quail's egg or two, all to be regurgitated for you. Lullaby, lullaby, swindles and schemes, flying's not near as much fun as it seems. Saw a unicorn today, the blue jay said as he lit. You didn't see any supper, I noticed, his wife replied coldly. I hate a man who talks with his mouth empty. Baby, a unicorn, the jay abandoned his casual air and hopped up and down on the branch. I haven't seen one of those since the time. You've never seen one, she said. This is me, remember. I know what you've seen in your life and what you haven't. The jay paid no attention. There was a strange-looking party in black with her, he rattled. They were going over Cat Mountain. I wonder if they were heading for Haggard's country. He cocked his head to the artistic angle that had first won his wife. What a vision for old Haggard's breakfast, he marveled. A unicorn coming to call, bold as you please, rat-tat-tat on the dismal door. I'd give anything to see. I suppose the two of you didn't spend the whole day watching unicorns, his wife interrupted with a click of her beak. At least I understand that she used to be considered quite imaginative in matters of spare time. She advanced on him, her neck feathers ruffling. Honey, I haven't even seen her, the blue jay began, and his wife knew that he hadn't, and wouldn't dare, but she patted him one anyway. She was one woman who knew what to do with a slight moral edge. The unicorn and the magician walked through the spring, over soft Cat Mountain, and down into a violet valley where apple trees grew. Beyond the valley were low hills, as fat and docile as sheep, lowering their heads to sniff at the unicorn in wonder as she moved among them. After these came slower heights of summer and the baked plains where the air hung shiny as candy. Together, she and Schmindrick forded rivers, scrambling up and down brambly banks and bluffs, and wandered in woods that reminded the unicorn of her home, though they could never resemble it, having known time. So has my forest now, she thought, but she told herself that it did not matter, that it would all be as before when she returned. At night, while Schmindrick slept the sleep of a hungry, footsore magician, the unicorn crouched awake, waiting to see the vast form of the Red Bull come charging out of the moon. At times, she caught what she was sure was his smell, a dark, sly reek easing through the night, reaching out to find her. Then she would spring to her feet with a cold cry of readiness, only to find 2 or 3 deer gazing at her from a respectable distance. Deer love and envy unicorns. Once, a buck in his second summer, prodded forward by his giggling friends, came quite close to her and mumbled without meeting her eyes, "You are very beautiful. You are just as beautiful as our mother said." The unicorn looked silently back at him, knowing that he expected no answer from her. The other deer snickered and whispered, "Go on, go on." Then the buck raised his head and cried out swiftly and joyously, "But I know someone more beautiful than you." He wheeled and dashed away in the moonlight, and his friends followed him. The unicorn lay down again. Now and then in their journey they came to a village, and there Schmendrick would introduce himself as a wandering wizard, offering, as he cried in the streets, to sing for my supper, to bother you just a little bit, to trouble your sleep ever so slightly, and pass on. Few were the towns where he was not invited to stable his beautiful white mare and stay the night, and before the children went to bed he would perform in the market square by lantern light. He never actually attempted any greater magic than making dolls talk and turning soap into sweets, and even this trifling sorcery sometimes slipped from his hands. But the children liked him, and their parents were kindly with supper, and the summer evenings were lithe and soft. Ages after, the unicorn still remembered the strange chocolate stable smell, and Schmendrick's shadow dancing on walls and doors and chimneys in the leaping light. In the mornings, they went on their way, Schmendrick's pockets full of bread and cheese and oranges, and the unicorn pacing beside him. Sea white in the sun, sea green in the dark of the trees. His tricks were forgotten before he was out of sight, but his white mare troubled the nights of many a villager, and there were women who woke weeping from dreams of her. One evening they stopped in a plump, comfortable town, where even the beggars had double chins and the mice waddled. Schmendrick was immediately asked to dinner with the mayor and several of the rounder councilmen, and the unicorn, unrecognized as always, was turned loose in a pasture where the grass grew sweet as milk. Dinner was served out of doors, at a table in the square, for the night was warm and the mayor was pleased to show off his guest. It was an excellent dinner. During the meal, Schmendrick told stories of his life as an errant enchanter, filling it with kings and dragons and noble ladies. He was not lying, merely organizing events more sensibly, and so his tales had a taste of truth even to the canny councilmen. Not only they, but all manner of folks passing in the street leaned forward to understand the nature of the spell that opened all locks if properly applied, and there was not a one but lost a sight of breath at the marks on the magician's fingers. "Souvenir of my encounter with the harpy," Schmendrick explained calmly. "They bite." "And were you never afraid?" a young girl wondered softly. The mayor made a shooing noise at her, but Schmendrick lit a cigar and smiled at her through the smoke. "Fear and hunger have kept me young," he replied. He looked around the circle of dozing, rumbling councilmen and winked widely at the girl. The mayor was not offended. "It's true," he sighed, caressing his dinner with linked fingers. "We do lead a good life here, or if we don't, I don't know anything about it. I sometimes think that a little fear, a little hunger might be good for us, sharpen our souls, so to speak. That's why we always welcome strangers with tales to tell and songs to sing. They broaden our outlook, set us to looking inward." He yawned and stretched himself, gurgling. One of the councilmen suddenly remarked, "My word, look at the pasture." Heavy heads turned on nodding necks, and all saw the village cows and sheep and horses clustered at the far end of the field, staring at the magician's white mare, who was placidly cropping the cool grass. No animal made a noise. Even the pigs and geese were as silent as ghosts. A crow called once, far away, and his cry drifted through the sunset like a single cinder. "Remarkable," the mayor murmured. "Most remarkable." Yes, isn't she? The magician agreed. If I were to tell you some of the offers I've had for her. The interesting thing, said the councilman who had spoken first, is that they don't seem to be afraid of her. They have an air of awe, as though they were doing her some reverence. They see what you have forgotten how to see. Schmendrick had drunk his share of red wine, and the young girl was staring at him, with eyes both sweeter and shallower than the unicorn's eyes. He thumped his glass on the table and told the smiling mayor, "She is a rarer creature than you dare to dream. She is a myth, a memory, a will-o'-the-wisp. If you remembered, if you hungered." His voice was lost in a gust, as hoofbeats and the clamor of children. A dozen horsemen dressed in autumn rags came galloping into the square, howling and laughing, scattering the townsfolk like marbles. They formed a line and clattered around the square, knocking over whatever came in their way, and shrieking incomprehensible brags and challenges to no one in particular. One rider rose up in his saddle, bent his bow, and shot the weathercock off the church spire. Another snatched up Schmendrick's hat, jammed it on his own head, and rode on roaring. Some swung screaming children to their saddlebows, and others contented themselves with wineskins and sandwiches. Their eyes gleamed madly in their shaggy faces, and their laughter was like drums. The round mayor stood fast until he caught the eye of the raiders' leader. Then he raised one eyebrow. The man snapped his fingers, and immediately the horses were still, and the ragged men as silent as the village animals before the unicorn. They put the children gently on the ground, and gave back most of the wineskins. "Jack Jingley, if you please," the mayor said calmly. The leader of the horsemen dismounted and walked slowly toward the table where the councilmen and their guests had dined. He was a huge man, nearly 7 feet tall, and at every step he rang and jangled because of the rings and bells and bracelets that were sewn to his patched jerkin. "Evening, Your Honor," he said in a gruff chuckle. "Let's get the business over with," the mayor told him. "I don't see why you can't come riding in quietly like civilized people." "Ah, the boys don't mean no harm, Your Honor," the giant grumbled good-naturedly. "Cooped up in the greenwood all day. They need a little relaxing, a little catharsis like. Well to it, eh?" With a sigh, he took a wizened bag of coins from his waist and placed it in the mayor's open hand. "There you be, Your Honor," said Jack Jingley. "It ain't much, but we can't spare no more than that." The mayor poured the coins into his palm and pushed at them with a fat finger, grunting. "It certainly isn't much," he complained. "It isn't even as much as last month's take, and that was shriveled enough. You're a woeful lot of freebooters, you are." "It's hard times," Jack Jingley answered sullenly. "We ben't to blame if travellers have no more gold than we. Can't squeeze blood out of a turnip, you know." "I can," the mayor said. He scowled savagely and shook his fist at the giant outlaw. "And if you're holding out on me," he shouted, "if you're feathering your own pockets at my expense, I'll squeeze you, my friend. I'll squeeze you to pulp and peel and let the wind take you. And be off now, and tell it to your tattered captain. Away, villains." As Jack Jingley turned away muttering, Schmendrick cleared his throat and said hesitantly, "I'll have my hat, if you don't mind." The giant stared at him out of bloodshot buffalo eyes, saying nothing. "My hat?" Schmendrick requested in a firmer voice. "One of your men took my hat, and it would be wise for him to return it." "Wise, is it?" grunted Jack Jingley at last. "And who be you, pray? What knows what wisdom is?" The wine was still leaping in Schmendrick's own eyes. "I am Schmendrick the magician, and I make a bad enemy," he declared. "I am older than I look, and less amiable. My hat." Jack Jingley regarded him for a few moments longer. Then he walked back to his horse, stepped over it, and sat down in the saddle. He rode forward until he was hardly a beard's thickness from the waiting Schmendrick. "Now then," he boomed, "if you be a magician, do summat tricksy. Turn my nose green, fill my saddlebags with snow, disappear my beard. Show me some magic, or show me your heels." He pulled a rusty dagger from his belt and dangled it by the point, whispering maliciously, "The magician is my guest," the mayor warned, but Schmendrick said solemnly, "Very well, on your head be it." Making sure, with the edge of his eye, that the young girl was watching him, he pointed at the scarecrow crew grinning behind their leader and said something that rhymed. Instantly, his black hat snatched itself from the fingers of the man who held it and floated slowly through the darkening air, silent as an owl. 2 women fainted, and the mayor sat down. The outlaws cried out in children's voices. Down the length of the square sailed the black hat, as far as a horse trough where it dipped low and it scooped itself full of water. Then, almost invisible in the shadows, it came drifting back, apparently aiming straight for the unwashed head of Jack Jingley. He covered himself with his hands, muttering, No, call it off." And even his own men snickered in anticipation. Schmendrick smiled triumphantly and snapped his fingers to hasten the hat. But as it neared the outlaw leader, the hat's flights began to curve, gradually at first, then much more sharply as it bent toward the councilman's table. The mayor had just time to lunge to his feet before the hat settled itself comfortably on his head. Schmendrick ducked in time, but a couple of the closer councilmen were slightly splattered. In the roar of laughter, varyingly voluntary, that went up, Jack Jingley leaned from his horse and swept up Schmendrick the magician, who was trying to dry the spluttering mayor with a tablecloth. "I misdoubt you be asked for encores," the giant bellowed in his ear. "You'd best come with us." He threw Schmendrick face down across his saddle bow and galloped away, followed by his shabby cohorts. Their snorts and belchers and guffaws lingered in the square long after the sound of hooves had died away. Men came running to ask the mayor if they should pursue and rescue the magician, but he shook his wet head, saying, "I hardly think it will be necessary. If our guest is the man he claims to be, he should be able to take care of himself quite well. And if he isn't, why, then an impostor taking advantage of our hospitality has no claim on us for assistance. No, never mind about him." Creeks were rushing down his jowls to join the brooks of his neck and the river of his shirt front, but he turned his placid gaze toward the pasture where the magician's white mare glimmered in the darkness. She was trotting back and forth before the fence, making no sound. The mayor said softly, "I think it might be well to take good care of our departed friend's mount, since he evidently prized her so highly." He sent 2 men to the pasture with instructions to rope the mare and put her in the strongest stall of his own stable. But the men had not yet reached the pasture gate when the white mare jumped the fence and was gone into the night like a falling star. The 2 men stood where they were for a time, not heeding the mayor's commands to come back, and neither ever said, even to the other, why he stared after the magician's mare so long. But now and then after that, they laughed with wonder in the middle of very serious events, and so came to be considered frivolous sorts.